before the pyramids rose, before a single pharaoh was crowned, one brother's betrayal taught the whole world how to die. Every summer, the great river shrinks to a whisper, the fields crack open, and the rich black soil crumbles into lifeless bone. Egypt watches the water fail, the crops wither, and remembers that once, long ago, even a beloved god lay cold and murdered. This is the story of a wise king who was killed by his own blood and a love fierce enough to chase him past death. It asks the one question that every people after Egypt would inherit and never stop asking. Can death itself ever truly be undone? For the story you are about to hear is not truly about how a god dies. It is about how love answers when he does. The tale itself was shattered into fragments and had to be gathered and pieced back together exactly like the god at its heart. Understand this before we begin. No single scroll, no single wall, no single tomb ever held this entire story whole in one place. It survived only in pieces, carved on crumbling tomb walls, painted inside coffins, whispered in prayers, scratched into cracked and weathered stone. For thousands of years, those pieces lay scattered across the sand and silence, waiting for patient hands to gather them once again. Piece by piece, hand by hand, the fragments were carried across centuries until the whole broken tale stood upright once more. A story broken into fragments, telling of a god broken into fragments, buried across a broken land. That is where we begin. Long before the sorrow and the scattered bones, Egypt knew a golden age and remembered the shining king who made it. In the first days of the world, the earth god Geb and the star-draped sky goddess Nut bring 4 children into being. The eldest is Osiris, born already crowned in destiny, calm as a wide, slow river, radiant as the morning sun over the reeds. Beside him stands his sister and his wife Isis, whose fierce love and sharper cunning will one day shake the gates of the underworld. And there in their bright shadow broods their brother Set, red as the burning desert, restless and jealous as a gathering storm. Osiris takes the throne of a wild and starving land where men still live like beasts and tear the flesh from one another. He kneels in the mud and teaches them to plant the grain, to press the sweet wine, to bake warm bread from the river's gift. He gives them law instead of clenched fists, temples instead of terror, music and festival instead of the lonely howl of the wasteland. Merchants come from far lands to trade in his markets, and songs about the gentle king travel further than his armies ever will. Under his gentle hand, Egypt blooms green and fat and singing, and the grateful people lift their voices and name him the Good One. Then the good king departs to carry his gifts to the wider world and returns a beloved hero straight into a jealous house. Every golden age hides a shadow somewhere behind the light, and Set has been sharpening his in silence for a very long time. Set cannot bear another cheer for his brother. Each song of praise for Osiris turns like a slow blade twisting deep inside his chest. So in secret, he takes his brother's exact measure, the length of his arm, the breadth of his shoulders, the span of his sleeping body. He commands the finest craftsmen in the land to build a chest of cedar and ebony and gold, fitted to one single man alone. Then, Set throws a lavish feast, and every great lord and lady of Egypt comes to drink and laugh beneath the swinging lamps. The wine flows freely, the music swells, and Set wheels out a chest so beautiful the whole banquet gasps with sudden longing. Whoever lies down inside and fits it perfectly, he promises with a smile, may carry this glorious treasure home this very night. Set watches every guest fail with a hidden patience, for he alone knows the chest will fit one man perfectly. One after another, the guests climb in and stretch out, and one after another, they prove too short or too tall or too broad. They laugh They try again, they clamber out defeated, and all the while the trap lies waiting with its open, golden mouth. At last, Osiris himself steps forward, smiling and unafraid, and lays his body down inside the chest as though sinking into a soft bed. He fits it perfectly. Of course he fits it perfectly. Every plank and corner was built in secret around the shape of him. And in that single heartbeat, across the crowded hall, Set's warm and welcoming smile pulls back to bare his teeth. 72 sworn conspirators rush the chest from every side and slam the heavy lid down hard over their trapped and startled king. They pour molten lead into every seam and joint until no breath, no sound, and no thread of light can ever pass through. The music dies in an instant. The good king of Egypt lies sealed alive inside his own beautiful and airless coffin. In the gray hour before dawn, they carry the heavy chest down to the Nile and cast it into the cold black current. The river swallows him and carries him away, and all of Egypt sleeps on, not yet knowing its golden age has quietly drowned. When the terrible word finally reaches Isis, the woman who loved him without limit becomes a hunter who will never, ever stop. Isis cuts off her hair in grief, tears her fine royal robe, and goes down alone in the dark to the water's edge. Along the way, she learns to hide her divine light, walking among mortals as a tired and dust-covered traveler. She follows the slow current on foot for days, asking every reed and every startled fisherman where the golden chest has drifted. The great Nile carries her husband out past the delta into the open sea, north along the coast to the distant shore of Byblos. There, the chest drifts gently against a slender young tamarisk, and the tree closes its trunk around it like a slowly gripping hand. The tamarisk swells and rises into a mighty, fragrant pillar, and deep inside its heartwood, the murdered king lies perfectly hidden. The local ruler admires the wondrous tree, cuts it down, and raises it as a proud column to hold up the roof of his great hall. So Osiris stands unseen inside a foreign palace pillar, while his grieving queen wanders the whole wide world searching for his bones. Isis crosses land and sea, guided by rumor and dreams and the deep, unhealing ache that will not let her rest for a single night. She arrives in Byblos as a quiet stranger and takes a humble place, gently tending the newborn child of the palace queen. By night, she works her secret magic over the cradle, and the whole astonished court begins to whisper that she is no ordinary servant. At last, she throws off the disguise and blazes with divine light and begs the trembling rulers for the pillar that holds her husband. They give her the great column at once, and she splits the fragrant wood apart and finds the chest still sealed and waiting inside. Isis throws her arms around the coffin and wails so loud and so long that the youngest prince falls dead upon the floor from fright. Then she lifts her drowned king, hides him from every eye, and carries him home at last across the wide sea to the soil of Egypt. But Set is not finished with his brother, and grief has not yet learned how cruel a single moonlit night can truly be. Isis hides the precious chest deep in the delta marshes and slips quietly away to search the reeds for her waiting hidden son. That very same night, Set is out hunting wild game by the cold white light of the moon among the tall papyrus. By pure and evil chance, he stumbles upon the hidden chest and knows at once the beloved face sealed silent inside. A fresh rage takes hold of him. Simple burial was never enough. He wants his brother scrubbed entirely out of the world. Set tears the body of the good king into 14 pieces and flings them out across the whole vast length of Egypt. A piece dropped in the green delta, a piece lost in the burning desert, a piece cast into every far and distant province. He scatters the murdered king like grain across the land, utterly certain that no god alive can ever gather him whole again. For years, the pieces of the good king lie forgotten in the mud, and Egypt forgets it ever had a golden age. When Isis returns to find only an empty and broken chest, the terrible silence very nearly shatters her where she stands. But this kind of love does not shatter. This love kneels down slowly in the mud and begins to count the missing pieces. Two grieving sisters set out to attempt the impossible, to build one whole living man again from scattered ruin and loss. Isis calls out to her gentle sister Nephthys, and together the two women take the shape of great, dark, mourning birds. On beating wings, they cross the whole of Egypt, searching every marsh and dune and forgotten shore for the fragments of their king. Wherever a single piece of him has fallen to earth, they land and weep, and wherever they weep, a holy shrine is raised. Some say wherever a shrine rose, that province would forever swear its own soil holds a piece of the buried god. One by one, with infinite care, they carry the scattered fragments home and lay each one gently down in its proper place. Slowly, beneath their patient and trembling hands, the broken body of the good king begins to take its shape once more. But one single piece, the river will never give back, swallowed forever by a hungry fish in the cold and secret deep. So Isis, who can bend the whole world with her voice, shapes the missing part anew from bright gold and whispered spell. She wraps and binds his mended body in clean white linen, making him the very first of all the wrapped and waiting dead. And there upon the soft green reeds lies Osiris, whole again, at last, yet cold to the touch and still not breathing. Now Isis prepares to attempt the one act no god has ever dared before her. She reaches out her hands toward the dead. Isis spreads her vast painted wings above her silent husband and beats warm living breath into the cold, still air around him. She sings words older than the world itself, secret words shaped to call a wandering spirit back from the endless dark. No sun has ever risen on such a thing. A dead god breathing, a widow bent above him weaving life from grief. A faint warmth stirs deep in the cold clay of him. For one held and trembling breath, the good king lives again. It cannot last forever. It was never meant to last forever. But it lasts just long enough for one act of desperate love. In that single stolen and sacred night, the grieving queen conceives a son, an heir who will carry his murdered father's claim. Then the borrowed warmth fades, the bright eyes close, and Osiris slips at last beyond her reaching hands, gone now for good. Yet he does not die away into nothing. He dies downward into a throne no living god has ever sat upon. The murdered king descends into the deep, and in the shadowed country below he becomes something far greater than a mere king. Osiris sinks slowly into the Duat, the vast, shadowed country of the west where every mortal soul must one day come to stand. There he rises upon a black throne, his skin the green of new growth, the crook and flail crossed proudly upon his chest. He becomes the silent judge before whom all the dead must one day appear and answer honestly for the whole weight of their days. Each trembling heart is laid upon a great golden scale and weighed against a single soft white feather of perfect truth. A heart made heavy with cruelty and lies tips the balance downward, and there the waiting devourer crouches with its open jaws. But a heart as light and clean as the feather itself passes safely on into the fields of endless rippling green. And so death itself is given a face and a throne and a strange and terrible mercy for those who lived well. The one who was betrayed and murdered now decides who shall live forever, and Egypt finally holds its answer to the silent grave. But a seated and judging king cannot avenge his own murder. That heavy debt falls now to the son not yet even grown. Far off in the whispering marshes, a mother hides a boy and quietly raises him for a war he does not yet know is coming. Isis flees deep into the tangled papyrus swamps of Chemis, cradling in her arms the fragile only child of the murdered king. Set wants the boy dead and gone, for while young Horus still draws breath, the stolen throne is never truly and safely his. So the mother hides among the endless reeds, starting in fear at every ripple, every drifting shadow, every low, unseen hiss. Scorpions stand guard around the child's fragile cradle, and even the serpents turn aside, warned away by her low whispered spells. Once the boy is stung and lies dying, and in her terror, Isis halts the very sun in the sky until at last he heals. The falcon learns patience in the reeds, for a stolen throne is not won in a single furious flight. Year by hidden year he grows in the marsh, quick and fierce and watchful, the young falcon staring out from the swaying reeds. Every single night she feeds him one story, the story of a golden king, a golden chest, and a golden age betrayed. And she teaches him the one word that matters more than any other. The throne of all Egypt is yours by blood and right. At last, the hidden boy becomes a keen, hawk-eyed young god, feathers bright and talons sharp, ready to leave the marsh behind. He does not simply march out to war. He walks instead straight into a courtroom to reclaim his murdered father's stolen crown. Horus stands tall before the great assembled council of the gods and boldly demands the ancient throne his father once wore. Across the marble floor stands Set, storm-browed and unbowed, claiming the crown belongs to the strong and the proven, not the untested young. The whole cosmos leans in to watch, for whichever way the court rules will decide how power itself passes forever after. But the gods do not simply choose a winner and go home. They argue. For long years upon endless years they argue. The divine court sits in session for 80 long and weary years, and still the immortal judges cannot bring themselves to agree. The mighty sun god favors Set, the powerful one, who alone guards his glowing solar boat from the serpent every single night. But wise Thoth and the tireless mother Isis press the case again and again for the murdered king's one true and only heir. Letters fly out to the most distant gods, testimony is heard and weighed, and the heavy crown passes back and forth on words alone. Set grows to fear the sharp and clever tongue of Isis and demands the whole trial be moved where she can never come. So they cross to a lonely island, and Set forbids the old ferryman on pain of ruin to carry the boy's mother across the water. But Isis is magic itself, given a woman's face. She becomes a bent old widow and slips quietly past every watching guard. There on the island, she tricks Proud, Set into passing judgment on his own theft with his own boastful and unwitting mouth. He condemns himself aloud without ever knowing it, and slowly, the whole astonished court turns its knowing eyes upon him. Cornered and trapped by clever words, Set demands the one thing he still does best. He turns the long trial into a duel. The two bitter rivals change into great gray hippopotami and plunge beneath the churning river to see which of them can last the longest. For years they contend in shape after shape, as boat and beast and man, and neither strength nor trickery ends it. Isis, sick with fear for her son below, hurls a barbed harpoon into the dark water and strikes entirely the wrong shape. She wounds her own Horus by terrible mistake, then strikes Set, and in his sudden fury, her own son turns his rage upon her. Grief and rage and old wounds boil over at once, and for one dark moment the divine family tears at itself among the reeds. Then come the darkest blows of all, struck far away from the watching eyes of the court, hidden deep in the shadows. Set falls upon young Horus in the dark and tears the shining living eye clean out of the young god's face. The bright light of Horus is lost and gone, buried somewhere out in the cold black mountains of the endless dark. But Thoth, the patient keeper of all that is broken, searches the darkness, finds the scattered pieces, and makes the eye whole again. The healed and shining eye becomes forever the sign of all things restored, of wholeness torn apart and lovingly mended once more. Wounded and shamed in his turn, Set is left diminished, his boasted strength broken at last in the long struggle for the throne. Yet neither god can truly destroy the other, and still the contested crown hangs unclaimed and glittering in the air between them. After 80 exhausting years, one single voice, rising up from the land of the dead, finally silences the endless quarreling court. In deep despair, the weary gods send a written letter down into the earth to the one king who has truly known death itself. Osiris answers them from his throne far below, and his cold and certain words rise up like judgment through the trembling ground. He reminds the squabbling gods that it was he who made the very grain that feeds even them upon their golden thrones. And he warns them plainly that his silent country of the dead can swallow proud gods just as easily as it swallows mortal men. 80 years of argument, of trickery and wounds and weeping come down at last to the word of a dead man. The heavy threat lands hard. The whole council falls dead silent. No god dares argue with the dread Lord of the Dead. And so the long-awaited verdict comes at last. The throne of Egypt belongs to Horus, the sun, the one true rightful heir. Set is seized, bound, and dragged before the court, defeated in the end by law and word where blade and battle had utterly failed. They give the beaten Set, the storms and the barren desert, to roar and rage forever, far away from the living green. And Horus is crowned at last in the white and the red, the Falcon King of the united two lands of Egypt. The son has finally won back everything the father lost, and the ancient crime at the heart of it all is answered at last. From that shining day onward, every pharaoh who takes the double throne becomes Horus himself, wearing a mortal human face for a while. In life, the king is the soaring falcon, and in death, he descends to become Osiris upon the quiet throne of the West. The murdered god and his avenging son are woven forever into the very crown and the very meaning of Egypt itself. And every single year, the deep meaning of it all returns, written plainly across the whole valley in mud and rising water. When the great river shrinks and the fields wither and die, the people say the good king lies drowned beneath the earth again. Then the flood comes roaring down from the south, black and rich and endless, and buries the dead brown land in sudden life. The green grain rises again out of the dark, wet mud, exactly as the murdered king once rose green upon his shadowed throne. The dying and rising of the good king would echo down the ages into fates he never lived to see. So the impossible answer they were promised is planted deep in the ground and harvested fresh again every single passing year. The good king never returns to walk the green fields of the living, and that is the quiet heart of his gift. Can death ever truly be undone? Egypt kneels at the flooding water each spring and answers back, yes, and yes, and yes again. A wise king was murdered by his brother, torn apart and scattered like grain across a whole grieving and weeping land. A woman gathered him, a son avenged him, and an entire people learned at last to hope for something beyond the silent grave. And that is why, when the river rises and the heavy wheat turns to gold, Egypt still stops and whispers the good king's name. The God who died became the promise carried by every dawn that no one who is truly loved is ever, ever lost forever.